Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Start looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. On the face of all mankind, the numbers up and the dead won't sign. Go along to get along in the tide by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The horde's upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's worldwide genocide. The overlords of hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotten, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. Strings no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Sunday, February the 5th, 2023. We're coming to you live from Carter County, Tennessee. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim and Dustin heading down that way. We're so glad to have you with us tonight. If you would, go ahead and hit the like button on here. It really helps us out getting other people to see it. Even the people that are subscribed often don't see it. But if you like it, makes it much more likely to show up in their feed or for them to get it in their notifications, all that good stuff. Also, we have a Rumble channel.
Like button so the geese don't win.
That's right. This is a war against geese, and we will not surrender. We will never die, and we want you to hit that button. If you don't know what we're talking about, ask in the chat. We'll be glad to tell you. But anyway, I'm going to go on and let you know about our Rumble channel, too. If you'll go over to Rumble, I usually put that in the description. I'll do that later. I can probably do that here right while we're talking, but I usually have that in the description. But if you'll go to Rumble and search for the Iron Mountain Hour, add us there, make you an account. If you do it on PC, it's a lot more user-friendly. It's a lot more like YouTube. So I'd recommend you do it that way. But if they do have a mobile app, and you can do that, too. So definitely go out there and check out the Iron Mountain Hour on Rumble.
They have it set up like it's like it really is set up for. I'm looking at the touchscreen of Rumble, and it's set up more like a PayPal or a Venmo than it is YouTube.
Well, that's from my user account there.
Yeah, but
more
I mean,
than
I have a user too for YouTube, but even it's not set up to just see how much. Because YouTube doesn't pay you out directly. It takes a lot of views before they'll even start talking about monetization.
Yeah.
Then you have to.
Which I've never been monetized on YouTube because all I do is make really dumb videos. A flock of geese caused Cliff's mother to wreck as a young child, and she span wildly off into the Watauga, flipped upside down. The family never recovered from the accident, and ever since, Cliff has really been on a hell-bent rampage to kill every mother goose that he sees because he knows what those devils are capable of. Don't bring it up in the chat. We need him calm tonight for this subject because geese really bring out the devil in him.
I'm sick of these motherfucking geese. No, sorry.
I got a devil.
But yeah, we got.
Kill some geese.
That's right. Well, listen, I put that Rumble there in the chat, so go over and check that out. Like us over there. Go watch some videos over there. If you want to catch up on last week, it's up there. I'll put this week's video up on the Rumble channel also, and you can go check that out if you get a chance to watch it later. If you watch it now, do it live with us. Eventually, we'll get us going live.
Lock spam over there.
I gotta make an account still.
Yeah, you knew. We need your support, Tim.
Yep, I need to.
We need all hands on deck
I need
here.
to get us over 10.
We need that 1% you're gonna get.
I mean, you'll never hit that big number on Rumble though for a while. I feel like because it is just such a smaller platform.
Yeah.
And,
It is. If you even look like, let's go look at a few people's accounts here on Rumble. Let's see who the biggest people are.
yeah. See who the biggest one is comparison to the other one. And I've not even considered how big we might be on a Twitch or.
All right, we're looking at this. Here we've got. These are streams from today or videos I said today. We're looking at Viva Phrase. Let's look at Donald Trump. He's got only 1.7 million followers on Rumble.
Is that not a lot?
I mean, for Rumble, I guess it is, but his other platforms, he's got way
Does
more.
He have a YouTube
Let's
account?
see. Yeah, he does. Where's Trump Jr.? His is a pretty high follower account. Let me find that. Right here he is. Let's see. Trump Jr. is 1.12 mil. He's got one video he did 2 days ago, has 15,000 views.
What's with his face? There's something.
I don't know. A lot of people would say here 147,000 views he did on one, or 174,000 on one he did a few days ago.
No, you want to check
So, I mean,
the YouTube?
Yeah, let's check out Donald Trump Jr. on YouTube.
Do somebody like a commentator, like a Tim Pool or a Jimmy. Well, Jimmy Dore might not be on Rumble.
Jimmy Dore is on Rumble. Let's try him.
Okay.
Jimmy Dore. I'm pretty sure I followed him on Jimmy Dore.
Because that's a really specific.
The
one,
Jimmy
because
Dore
it's not really
Show.
big.
All right, let's see. He's got 160,000 followers.
On.
And then let's go to YouTube. I don't want to be. Let's get out of the creator studio. Get out of our channel.
Don't be giving your passwords and stuff away.
I'll try not to. Can I just get plain old YouTube here, folks? There we go.
It's
All right,
like
now it's
a-
probably.
We remember this device.
Let's see, Jimmy Dore on YouTube. He's got 1.1 million on YouTube.
So what's it? How much?
10, almost 10 times what he's
Okay,
got on
so there you
Rumble. Let's see how many views he gets on YouTube versus Rumble. Though here's a video from him for a day ago. Got 5.4K on
I feel like that's a fair
YouTube.
comparison because Jimmy
Yeah.
Dore's literally only online. He hasn't really done any sort of out of the house stuff since the beginning of COVID. So
Yeah.
it's just online primarily.
Well, let's see
Oh,
here. We
never
got
mind. He's gonna be live here at some point, so he's getting back out of the house.
what's we got? One day ago he did 5.4 thousand views on Rumble, and how many did he get on yesterday? Where'd he go? Oh, here he goes. 110,000. So he got about 20 times the views.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right. Got about 20 times the views on Rumble or on YouTube as he got on Rumble. So, yeah, it's still a growing channel, but it is a way to get your stuff out there and not be censored. As far as I know, they haven't really censored anybody. I'm sure there's exceptions, but you know, you got Gab, even the most free speech platform they are out there. Like they'll allow, you know, which I'm all for let everybody say whatever they want, even if they're bigots or hateful or whatever, as long as it's not, abuse of somebody, physical or abuse of a child or something like that. I don't want to let that be on there. And also on something like that, I don't want to see porn. But
Twitter allows
Twitter does allow porn, but it's pretty much on a separate. I mean, it's there, but you're not going to see it in your normal feed unless you go looking for it for the most part.
Okay, what
And-
about okay, here's a point I'd like to see what you think about. YouTube and other policies, some of the stuff that they yank people for, they should yank them for, I think everybody would agree, because a lot of it actually has to do with laws, like abusing animals. There's one that I think that's going to come down the pipeline real soon, which is harassment. Like, you can currently, there's no expectation of privacy in public is what these people use, and they go around like just film people. Because it used to be like auditing police officers. Now people are just filming people for just no reason, just to try to get responses out of them. So do you feel like that's going to alter laws?
I don't know. I don't believe there's anything that should stop you from reporting what goes on in public. I mean, that's a pretty slippery slope. If you put a ban on that, like, well, you can't put this person's face out there, and then that leads somebody's going to have to decide what is and isn't okay, right? And then anytime you have on something like that as far as free speech, it's just not a good idea, I don't think, to have a monitoring board over everything that you post on the internet, make sure it is or isn't okay. But then again, you could also have it would be grievance based, if somebody puts your face up there. But if you're acting like an ass in public, that's...
Well, like, I can't go on YouTube right now and incite a group of people to go do something with me, like, because you couldn't do that in real life. Like, it's like inciting.
Come on, everybody!
You know what I'm saying? Like, and people have been kicked off of YouTube for doing stuff like that. And then it turned out, like, I remember, this is a weird example, I know, because it's not inciting violence, but YouTube kicked a guy named Stefan Molyneux off.
Yeah.
And I'm wanting to say it kicked him off in like 2016, maybe it was earlier.
It was a little later than that. Hey, Alvin, what's up? Glad to have you back with us.
What's up, Alvin? One of the reasons they kicked him off is because they accused him of using cult-like tactics.
Yeah.
And I know people might not be familiar with who that guy is, but I could kind of see that he didn't incite violence, and I see people on YouTube now currently that do incite violence, and yet they don't get kicked off. So really, they're going to enforce whatever they want to. So anyway,
I followed Molyneux on Twitter. He was an interesting Twitter. He kind of seemed like almost like a Jordan Peterson type character, except for...
Follow him long enough, and he starts to seem less genuine.
Yeah.
He's not. I do think he is a smart guy. He made some pretty cool videos back in the day that were pretty insightful. Like, he had one called Words that I think you can find. It's just kind of describing how people and government bodies and stuff use your language just to kind of entrap your own thought processes and stuff. But he started talking about, like, telling people that it was okay for them to leave their family of origin and all that stuff. It's a process they call defooing. And it's like, well, that's like the first thing cult leaders do. So even if that's true that you need to get away from your crazy family, you can't just like openly tell people to leave your family and come unto me. It's creepy.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what ultimately got in trouble for.
Well, I knew some people in my ex-wife's family. They had a church that they went to that if your family members didn't go to that church, they did not want you to go to that church to talk to those family members anymore. Mm-hmm. It was up to you to either get them to go to that church or to cut off ties with you.
Yeah, those churches exist.
Yeah. So that is out there. What are you talking about? Stephen got tied up with Lauren Southern in her anti-Muslim and trafficking movie. Okay. Could be.
I know on the internet he got in a little bit of trouble for, what do they call it? Is it grifting or grinting? Maybe you often have to do with that one. I don't remember. There's one tactic. Grinting is when you always find a reason for people to keep giving you money, and that's what he started getting accused of, because he started saying like stuff like, tell me what sort of videos you want me to make. Like almost like it just started sounding like it was more about just keep me afloat. I don't know. He's an interesting one. If you just want to look up Stefan Molyneux, maybe you'll get something out of him. Maybe you'll just kind of see the I don't know. I don't want to be mean to the guy. He kind of seems like a hidden narcissist that really kind of ran out of stuff to say. And that's what kind of like Jordan Peterson just keeps going. He keeps finding. That's why I wouldn't put him on the same level of being interesting. Because like Jordan Peterson keeps coming up with stuff that keeps people interested, whereas Stefan Molyneux kind of ran out of that whole you can free your mind thing, and that was just the end of it.
Anything else you want to learn to free now, guys?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's like. So, maybe we can do a course on history. Like, that was the attitude of it. It was like, geez, Stephen. It's like, what happened? You were the positive motivational speaker here, and you're making me sad.
Well, there's no shortage of interesting stuff to talk about. That's for sure. Let's see. Well, since Joe's in there live, Joe probably knows about the geese. He's laughing at it. If y'all didn't know, Alvin, I don't know if you were with us when we looked into that story or not,
How
but
long has that been?
I don't know, probably 6 months ago,
Has
maybe
been.
a little bit longer. There was a community over in Johnson City who was being plagued by a group of geese, or a gaggle of geese, I guess you would say. And they decided as a neighborhood and went and got the permits and hired the company to gas those poor Canada geese to death. Now, I know Canada geese can be assholes, but that was their solution, their final solution, if you will, for the geese over there in that neighborhood. And they obtained the permits, and somehow, whenever they obtained the permits, that story made it into the local newspaper, and then the community uproared, as communities tend to do.
Listening.
Yeah, the hissing. Yeah. So that's why we say gas the geese. Now, we probably won't tell that story again for a while, so you can continue to keep that secret and play the game of geese gassing with us here in the chat, and we'll have a little inside joke for when the newbies come along. But yeah, that's where we got that.
There's some like anthropomorphic goose overlord that spies on us.
All hail the geese.
Maybe that's what that balloon is like
Yes.
the goose overlord.
I posit a theory.
It's a
that
can.
You have like reptilians. You have like a race of like geese type people.
geese, like the big gassing one up in the hot.
Yes.
Be like that picture I showed you in the book with the rooster head on the guy with the snake legs. He could have a goose head.
Yes, exactly. He's the goose god. He
Abraxas.
just ultimately wants to be left alone.
That's right.
The
Everybody,
loner god.
It's like, while you're on geese, that old statement, a silly goose. That's just a funny statement because geese are not silly.
They're not very silly.
They're always.
they're pretty serious.
They're
Imagine
always
if there
serious.
was. Imagine if there was a silly goose. How cool that would be. I'm not really up for like.
Just over there, like.
Yeah, like,
Having a good old talk.
got the tongue hanging out and stuff like the Aflac duck. Like, I know geese aren't silly, and I'm not really for like inbreeding dogs to get the wiener dog longer, for example. That's how they do that. So, But what if we did breed a silly goose?
Hmm.
And is it possible? Get on it, fellas, scientists.
Well, I
Make
mean,
me a silly goose.
Ducks have been known to behave in silly manner, so
Metal duck.
we need a hybrid goose
Yeah.
duck, and that will give us the silly goose.
Pop them together. I think that
Would
one
it be
believes
a
ours.
deuce
You think
I
or
think
a guck?
I like duck better.
Guck,
a guck?
A deuce is fun to say, but then
Guck,
again,
guck,
that
deuce.
means
It could be a guck deuce.
I like either way. I like having it interchangeable. That way, nobody's ever really sure what you're talking about.
I like deuce sounds like number two, and you're
Geese
essentially
do like
calling
the
it
number
pooping.
two in the worst places, and when you're at the lake and then you step in it.
This is true.
I'm
Then you
going
got-
with the goose.
All right.
That's Latin inspired.
The goose. I'm even going to take the U and the C. It's just going to be D, accent. What is that? Agu. Goose.
Alvin's talking about he had them afflicting us in Wichita. Geese gassing there too, and the farmers here let the geese and ducks eat the insects. Kind of cool to see. Says Bill. Huge fields of birds hunting. Yeah, if they don't got, I mean, if they don't damage the plants, I guess that's a pretty good trade-off. I mean, there's some things like geese will stomp the plants down in the ground and ruin the ground make it hard for anything to grow there.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard of other animals doing that, but I didn't know ducks.
Yeah, duck and gas feet.
Goose could be fat enough to squish plants down.
Yeah, they just kind of constantly have their whole big fat feet
Can
pushing
I tell
stuff
y'all
down.
a gross gardening trick?
Yeah.
This is gross, but this is nasty. My wife's finding this out for the first time if she's even listening. The best way, okay, I use beans down the side of my house this year. Like I have rose bushes, and the beans climb. So I put half runners in there, and I let the beans climb the roses all the way down the side of my. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Down my corner of my house, right? And then I had the garden out there, fenced off with chicken wire and all that crap. Keep the deer out of it. But you can't put chicken wire on the edge of your house. That looks red. I just didn't want to do that. So I got the idea. This is great. To pee into a Miracle Grow jug for a while and then sprinkle it all around the outside of my house. And at nighttime, I'd just go out there and eat a free willy because nobody can see me anyway. But it turns out deer don't like the smell of human pee, and none of my half-redder beans got eaten, and I didn't have to use any chemicals except for my own urine.
It's sterile, so.
Yeah.
I wonder if that works for birds, because birds are what I eat my strawberries every year.
The only thing that went after them was the little the bean bugs. That was the only thing that was on them.
Now birds like to go down, and as soon as like the tip of the strawberry will start turning red, they'll go eat the bottom off of that and leave you a whole green berry.
Nasty
yeah,
berry.
that ripens with a big hole in the bottom of it.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Can you do the chicken wire?
That's probably what I need to
top of
do.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's probably what I
It's
need
like
to do.
mesh,
Yeah.
like the fine mesh kind of wrap.
Dumb bird.
I tried leaving a radio out there because I had a neighbor one time who told me that worked, and it worked until it didn't. Like once they realized it was not a danger, then I left it like a radio, or transistor radio in a bag out there just on low volume, and it worked for a little while. But does that mean you got to pull your chicken wire down now? Oh yeah, Alvin, don't worry about looking red. Tim lives in Tim lives in a suburb type neighborhood, I guess you'd say, or a cul-de-sac kind of neighborhood, kind of.
It's a neighborhood that I mean, if you know anything about me, I'm paranoid, and we specifically moved into that spot because it's on a hill. I can see everybody except for the cops that live behind me on a cul-de-sac, so people can't just turn around and keep, So it's on a dead end, and all the land that is in front of me is a sheer drop, and it's all Summers and Taylor because they couldn't sell it because it's too sheer.
Right.
So they own that little strip of land all the way down the neighborhood, and so I'm pretty safe in a zombie apocalypse, but it is still not sufficient for my bug out land that I would like to do at some point. My neighborhood's but the chicken wire, the garden and stuff put up. Everybody's pretty cool about that stuff. I did take it down after everything was done and dead, but that's just because I have a lot of trees and all the leaves just will go in there and create like a ball pit of like acorns and stuff. So I have to pull it up or that becomes a fit real quick.
Well,
You just set it on fire next year. Really pissed the neighborhood off. Like, what is he doing?
As this tent.
It's contained.
well, we definitely wouldn't care about that here. We got my neighbor over here has set the trees on fire a couple times, and nobody cares.
That he kept burning stuff that one day you're like, this is gonna explode.
Oh yeah, that guy too. Yeah, my next door neighbor had fires up to the top of his house, and then my neighbor across the way here that I have a fence connecting our yard, our lawns. She has set a whole bunch of grass fires and leaf fires and caught the whole tree line on fire.
Oh no.
So yeah, that one they had to get the fire department out here, and then the next day she was back at it. But
We accidentally set. Well, I didn't. I was a kid at the time. My grandma had a burned bush pile, like they put everything there, and the wind came real hard. Came like whoo, like a fire extinguisher, and it just shot out the side of the chicken wire. So far, it shot out a good 6 feet and caught all of her old corn on fire, and it just started going up. So we had to go through and just start stomping it. But that's what happened over in where Dollywood or Dreamland, where that big fire in Gatlinburg happened. It wasn't the fire because we have mountain fires all the time. It was just that day when it's like 60-mile-an-hour winds came through and just essentially turned the whole forest into a flamethrower.
yeah, that was a pretty big fire down there. Do you remember? This is totally off subject, but since it's in my brain, I want to bring it up. You remember several years ago there was like a whole bunch of people, like randomly died down in Gatlinburg. There was like some people like found dead in a hot tub. There was a helicopter crash, a plane crash, and then there was like a forest fire that killed a bunch of people in a chalet. And it was like, and then I see this video on Discovery Channel. I think, I can't remember what channel it was on. It was on something like that. And it was a video about the Russian mob running out of Knoxville and Gatlinburg, because they had been trying to get people into Oak Ridge, and then they had basically set up all around it, and then had all these weird
I didn't
deaths.
know about all that.
I don't know if they're connected or not, but it seemed like there was a whole bunch of pretty wealthy people died up there. I didn't recognize any of the names around the same time, and then right after that, I saw that program about that. So. But speaking of spies, we were talking about that balloon. Did you have any thoughts on that? You said you thought maybe it was ours. All right, let's hear what you think about that before we get into the main
Let me say
topic.
this before my brain explodes. We had a serial killer fairly recently, within like 2 hours of us. There's a little town called Travelers Rest that's between
I know
here.
Travelers Rest.
Okay, Travelers Rest. had a guy that lived nearby there that was using it as a hunting ground back in 2016. It was
Wow.
like 4 to 6 people or something.
Damn.
I don't remember. Anyway, I just found that out the other day. I was like, holy crap, these
Hadn't heard
weirdos
that.
are getting close. Anyway, so Traveler's Rest. I always thought, dude, because I have to go through Traveler's Rest to get to like a lot of the places I play, which makes sense because of Traveler's Rest. It's a creepy town. I'm sorry, if you live in Traveler's Rest, it just has an air of somebody is always dying here.
Well, I can see that. I mean, you call it down Travelers. It's like, stop here, travelers.
Doesn't it seem
Come
creepy?
on
Dude?
in.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Stop there and stay and
It
rest.
just has a creepy feel to it, even there's nothing
Let your guard down. We promise
outwardly
it's
creepy
okay.
about it. It feels creepy every time I pass through it. And then I found out the other day that there was a damn serial killer there back in 2016.
Maybe it's like Derry in Stephen King's It.
It just doesn't. It's not. The place doesn't feel good. I swear to God, doesn't it? I think it's our balloon. I think the weather balloon's ours, and that's why I didn't shoot it down. And here's my logic. I could be an idiot. One, was this 1954 a balloon for spying? Is this like 1966 Batman? They've got a balloon up there. So they can't okay. They have Google in China, do they not?
They do.
How many spots along that little stripe that it got out of Canada were blacked out on Google Earth? That's my question, because they got Google Earth in China, they can use Elon or whoever does.
But then
Google.
also, I mean, Google gets their data from the U.S. Geological Survey and U.S. military satellites, and they're going to scrub anything that they don't want you to see on Google
Yeah,
Earth.
but how much of it could they get with that balloon? It just seems like a complete waste of time.
Well, I mean,
to
I
me.
think I heard it was like 20-some thousand meters up, which is pretty high. You get a pretty good view, and look how fast it traveled over the country.
Yeah, it just seems like...
I'm not going to say where I know one way or the other, but it definitely does seem weird.
I
mean,
don't know anything. It could very well just be a China weather balloon sounds so stupid that it could definitely be our reality. Okay,
Yeah.
but in my opinion, just knowing how government works, it seems like they were like, God, you know what? We're doing an awful lot of really bad crap right now, and we really don't need people looking.
are starting to find out. Hey, let's distract them with
Yeah.
this.
God, you know what we do? Oh, people like to hate China. They're over Russia or whatever because we got to let's make them hate China. Let's boom. If they'd said it was a South Korean or North Korean weather spy balloon, I'd have believed it. North Korean, it's ghetto, right?
Yeah.
China's not ghetto. They got good technology. They're
Yep.
going to send a weather balloon.
Well, honestly, a weather balloon could be pretty good tech. I mean, not just anybody can throw together a weather balloon like that, but I also heard that had a payload the size of like 3 commercial buses. And
anybody go out there and get it when they shut it down?
yeah, I'm sure they did. That's what I was
See
thinking,
what's on
man.
it.
It's like all these people I know were talking. Okay, let's believe the official story and say it's a Chinese weather balloon. Okay, a lot of people are like, well, what's Trump that would have been shot down for? It's like, first of all, whatever it is, if you don't know what it is, why would you want to shoot it down over your population?
Well, they had a dirty bomb in it.
Yeah,
or something. I didn't get
or
that.
some
That's
kind
the
of
first thing I thought.
some kind of biological something. Two,
No, you couldn't get a helicopter just to
that's
snip
what
it.
I'm
and
saying.
carry
Why
it
would you
off.
not capture it? Why would
Batman
you
did
shoot
it
it
back
down?
in 1987.
Yeah. Why would you
Steal
shoot
his
it down?
balloon, damn it. That's what you should have done.
What if it was an EMP? I mean, you shoot an EMP over top of the country and you put out all your lights. But
I mean, Biden is stupid, but shoot it down. It's like, they don't know what's in it. But I really do think it's like, why not go get it? But at the same time, I'm also thinking, hell, it's just a damn balloon. They probably got Google Earth over in China, and they're like, there's nothing there. You know, I'm just saying, it's probably our weather balloon, and they're like, oh, crap, let's blame China.
well, I do know we spotted it in
Wake up,
Montana,
everybody.
and it was Montana. I do know there's like ICBM sites all out through there. So I wondered, was maybe there's something that China did that was covert, that was not in the news, maybe in Thailand or Taiwan, I mean, something like
Canada.
that. Yeah, maybe in Canada, but maybe they were doing something to trick our intelligence agencies into reacting and then spying and seeing what the reaction was. So, there's rumors that they're talking about
Wasn't there a movie
taking
called Look Up?
Thailand. Yeah, don't look
Look
up.
Up.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if we're biblical, we could say signs and wonders in the air.
Yes, that's
Keep them
right.
distracted.
That's right.
Oh, we've missed some chats. Sorry, fellas.
What's up there? Yeah, Spill says her son's a sheriff and booked. Oh, the serial killer. There was a serial killer in Mendocino area, and dumping them on Highway 101. Her son booked him. Wow. Alvin says the only thing harder than the weather in China is Chinese arithmetic. Ain't that the truth? And talking without getting beat up by the Chinese government. Spill the tea.
Send a balloon over the next day to come get you. It's a hot air balloon this time. You see a guy landing dressed in a suit.
The Chinese did issue a press release expressing their displeasure over shooting down their perfectly innocent weather balloon. Alvin tells us. Yeah, there's they did admit it was theirs, but who knows if that's true or not. But they were like, oh, it's a civilian balloon. Like, well, okay, yeah, sure. But the CIA is a civilian. The CIA is a civilian agency.
Like, are we allowed to do that? Like, if I know it's Chinese and foreign body or whatever. But could hypothetically, if I lived out in the middle of the desert and I was like, you know what, I'd really like to build a big ass balloon. Am I allowed to build a big ass weather balloon and just send it up and just let it go over the rest of the states? Or
you got to get permitted, or they will
That's what I'm saying.
shoot it
So,
down.
I mean, like, I think it's funny. They should have shot it out because I think it's funny.
Huh?
So now you can't around the world in 80 days anymore?
No. You could. You just have to get permission from each of the territories that you passed over. Like, a friend who's a drone operator, and he has to have FAA approval to operate in certain areas, just like if he was flying an aircraft. So
You can't have drones in national parks anymore. There's signs everywhere. And I'll be honest, I don't blame them. Like, you can hear them from a mile away because it's so quiet out there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear, you're like, where's it at? Because people still do it. I mean, like, it's like I get why they banned them because it's like it's so loud out there when it's completely quiet. And it sounds scary. It makes me think it's like 1984, like the robot dogs coming after me.
yeah.
Is that right?
All right. Well, it's 10:36. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve, y'all.
Robot dog was Fahrenheit 451. Sorry.
Was it? I don't remember. I don't think I read Fahrenheit 451. I think I saw a movie years ago, but I barely remember it. I know it was something to do with burning books.
I know we had to read one in high school at least. Which one did you have to read? Because they give you, like, the option was like 1984 Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451. It seems like there was one more dystopian one.
I don't remember.
Animal Farm, I think.
I read Animal Farm.
Animal Farm.
I read
Big
Lord
one,
of
I guess.
Lord of the Flies in high school.
I guess it's the least detrimental to the indoctrination.
Yeah. Yeah, it just makes it sound like the guys who took over were corrupt, and that was the whole problem, not that the system was designed to build that sort of thing. I mean, I guess that's what Orwell was actually going for, was showing that the way that system was set up, of course Eric Blair was a communist, and he actually worked for Soviet Russia at some time before he was an author. But Animal Farm was I guess the lowest common denominator breaking of the propaganda, I guess. But it ultimately put the problem with the system on the people in power, I think, more than the system itself. Whereas 1984 kind of went to how bad the system was and what the ultimate ends of it were.
Did you do Brave New World? Did you read that one?
I read it not in school, but I read it just out of
Well, yeah, I read it
in my own time.
What was the other one I mentioned? Did you read Fahrenheit 451?
No, I didn't read 451.
Okay, well, it's specifically about books.
Yeah.
Like, so if you just pretty much take that kind of a world, he's a fireman, but they specifically burn shit, right? That's what it is. He's a fireman in the book. His specific job is to. Oh, did you ever see Equilibrium?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the very quick scene in Equilibrium when he goes burn it, and those two guys walk up with flamethrowers and start shooting all the paintings and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's that guy. And that's the whole story.
Okay.
He just starts.
I did remember that much of it from seeing the movie, but I don't really remember a lot about it other than that. Oh, 451 is the temperature paper burns at. Thank you, Alvin.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know that.
I did know that, but I did forget it. So thank you for reminding me.
Spill said the balloon. She said it is said that the balloon went over the same X pattern that the 2017 eclipse went in. I got to go see that in the total eclipse there. My brother lived in a town lives in a town where it went over in totality. So that was pretty cool to get to see a solar eclipse and a total solar eclipse.
147 is when your eardrum explodes, in case anybody needs to know that.
Is that right?
Yeah. Thank you, line 6.
Like-
Decibels.
Yeah.
I guess that's because
I was
yeah.
gonna say not temperature. That's it.
Oh, no.
Although 147 would
147
definitely
decibels.
not be any good for you either as far as temperature goes. Well,
It wasn't.
That's back in the new metal days when we thought that, like, volume and distortion, were the same thing. Can't play Limp Bizkit without this new line 6, HD 147.
Sound like a robot.
Featuring Evanescence. Dun, 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 dun. To give them credit, they had a channel on there that sounded exactly like that Evanescence guitar tone. So.
Yeah, and they did meet the
Limp
demand
Bizkit
for
has
what
a new
people
album
wanted.
coming out too.
Who does?
Evanescence does. Limp Bizkit does.
Limp Bizkit, I mean, Evanescence actually has new songs. I think they have a new album, but yeah, Limp Bizkit's getting ready to drop a new album.
Hey, and for those who don't know, our buddy Mike Stevenson that
Go
produced.
to Grammys.
He got nominated.
Yeah, he got nominated for a Grammy, so that's pretty cool.
So he didn't win, but he enjoyed the trip and had plenty of good experience because he got to meet some of his heroes. So Mike,
Awesome.
under the slim chance you want it, I ain't gonna win a Grammy anytime soon, but my mixes sounded really good, and I think you deserve it. So there you go. He
Yep.
got it for classical music with Dave Eggers, who's a cellist.
Okay.
Moved to Bristol during the cool story pandemic lockdown. Right, that's the paraphrase version. Dave Eggers is one of the number one cellists in the world. And so he still needed to work, and he had a bunch of movie soundtracks that needed to be done. Couldn't find any available studios at New State, New York, where all the Hollywood ones are. California shut down too. Heard there was some studios in Bristol, Tennessee. Came down there, fell in love with the town, moved, and now Dave Eggers and Mike have worked together on a couple of pretty good stuff. Mike and him have done some Netflix stuff. They did the soundtrack to the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League. He's done a lot of cool stuff. So the pandemic inadvertently helped some people.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
He
Mike,
did good on our stuff for like as quickly as we went in and like
That's the
recorded,
reason I went
did
over and started
everything. It's
working
like in one day we had an album
Yeah.
completely start to finish.
yeah, no, we did a live recording album with, and Mike turned it out and he made it sound like it was played at a live show basically, but still kind of kept everything tight on it and kept it sounding clean. So it had the feel. Of course, we did all just get in isolation booths and play like we normally did.
No, it's something good.
So he did a good job on it. But-
It's the style of music that we
Yeah,
play
exactly.
too.
And that's Corned Beef and the Pillbillies. That's on YouTube if you want to look at that. It's on all the streaming stuff if y'all are interested in checking out, hearing what me and Dustin do. And Dustin also has his metal band, Decade of Deceit, and his synth project, Aetherweaver, Aether. And then Tim is the artist known as Tim on YouTube if you want to check out any of our music. But let's get into the topic at hand now that we've been on for like 40 minutes.
And Dave Egger is, if you've literally watched the movie, you've heard his
Yeah.
cello going, wah, wah. And if you've listened to a song, and that does include Evanescence, Break Me Up, boop, 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 that was Dave Eggers. If you've listened to a Mumford & Sons song, that was Dave Eggers. He's literally done everything.
So yeah, tonight we're going to talk about the creature from Jekyll Island, and I apologize if my telling of this story is not what it could be because I fell asleep before the show and I woke up.
My numbers.
Yeah, I woke up about 30 minutes before the show was supposed to come on, and I didn't have time to put everything together like I like. So I'm going to lot it from memory here, but I hope you'll forgive me, and I hope I can still get this story out there because it all starts like this. In 1910, in November, 6 men snuck onto a powerful U.S. senator's rail car.
Six magical rings that when united.
Captain Point.
These men all left their last names behind, and they snuck to the train station there in New Jersey, and they got on the train car of Senator Nelson Aldrich at the rear of the train. Now, they didn't use their last names, and some of them even changed their first names because they were afraid that the servants on the train might recognize them, and they didn't want to be spotted all traveling together. Now, what was the purpose of this meeting? Well, we've got to remember back in 1910, you're dealing with after the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction and reconciliation of the two sides, a lot of stuff being done, a lot of money being lent out, and there was a lot of bank runs, and there was a lot of bank collapses. A lot of people went broke. So the public was really feeling this sentiment of we've got to do something about the banks, right? So these men were going to do something about the banks. Now they didn't want anyone to know who they were because they were in fact bankers. And the public did not have a taste for bankers. So these men went undercover.
Not much has changed.
Yeah. One of the men actually, he carried, because they said they were going on a duck hunting trip. So he carried a shotgun that he had to borrow from a friend because he didn't have one so that people would see him. He told his family even that he was going on a duck hunting trip, and he didn't want anyone to know that he was full of crap. So he borrowed a shotgun and had a case with him as he went. Only one man of the group carried a gun, so I'm not sure how good that would how good that would work, or fly over, if you will, for a duck hunt. But the men, they believed that the banking system suffered from serious problems, and it did. But these guys, if they were all from the banking industry, they got together and went down to Jekyll Island to basically put into place the Federal Reserve System. Now, who are the men on the train? Well, first we had Abram Piatt Andrew, and he was an American economist, and he was the Assistant Secretary of the Treasurer, and during World War I, right? And he was a U.S. House member from Massachusetts. Now, this guy had the end there.
Vampires. Look at that collar.
Well, that is sharp. He's got it folded down hard there, doesn't he? He might be a vampire.
Well, maybe.
We've got Paul Warburg was another one of the men. Now, if you've ever heard of Daddy Warbucks from Little Orphan Annie, he was named after Paul Warburg, and he was basically what do you call it? A caricature, I guess, of Paul Warburg. And he was a German-American investment banker. He was a naturalized citizen in America, and he was vice chair of the Federal Reserve from 1916 to 1918. But before that, he came from Hamburg, Germany, who were in the banking empire there. Okay, at this time, the United States had a couple of central banks, both of which had failed. One of them due to Andrew Jackson, who we'll talk about a little bit later tonight, because Andrew Jackson ties into our area with a story about Irwin, Tennessee, what's now Irwin, Tennessee. But Warburg, he was born in Hamburg, Germany, and the Warburg family, they were bankers back for centuries, all the way back to Venice. You know, you've heard of the black nobility of Venice and all this, and a lot of these powers that rose up, including the Rothschild family, out of the banking families of Europe. Warburg was one of those, and he actually managed a lot of the money for the Rothschilds through the New York investment firm Kuhn Loeb and Company. And so I'm sure you've heard that name before.
Not actually.
Where he also had a partner in Jacob Schiff, if you've ever heard of that name.
Related to Adam.
I don't know.
Probably.
It's probably a descendant from.
I mean, Chuck Schumer and Amy Schumer are related.
Are they really?
She's a damn stand-up comedian, and she's related to a Congress.
She's something like
whatever Schumer was.
Oh, my pussy's gross. I'm funny.
I'm still blaming you, Anthony Jeselnik. You gave her a career, and we've all had to suffer for it. I don't care how funny you are and how many fans you got. Anthony Jeselnik is responsible, and he needs to be held accountable.
One of the other fellers on the train was Henry Davison Sr. He was an American banker and philanthropist, and he grew up in New England banking and J.P. Morgan, and in 1909 he became a senior partner there, and he also founded the Bankers Trust System. So these guys are pretty high all up in the banking industry so far. We've also got Nelson Aldrich, and he was the Republican senator from Rhode Island, I believe. From Rhode Island. And he was one of the big four key Republicans who largely controlled major spending decisions in the Senate. And a lot of times he was referred to as the general manager of the nation. So there's number 4, or number 5. Now, who's our last man to go? I think we might have missed one, actually. We just did 4 there. Frank Vanderlip was a journalist, I guess, and he's the one who made the record of all this.
Stupid name.
And he was also a banker, too, though. So he was you got to remember back at the time, and very similar to today, a lot of the banks used the newspapers to carry their water for them because people didn't put their plugs in the description box. Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. Yeah.
Any of y'all heard of the music curse in Knoxville? No, I've not heard about that.
No. Tell us about it.
Tell us about the music curse in Knoxville. Are you talking about the old, never mind, I'm not going to shit talk the venue. Keep going. I was going to say the saloon over there with Longhorn, the Long Branch Saloon. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't mind Long Branch.
Arthur Shelton, that's the one I forgot. Let's find Arthur Shelton and pull him up real quick.
Arthur Shelton?
Yep.
That seems like a workaday name for a man in charge.
Well, he was the assistant. That's why I didn't put him, because he was Aldrich's assistant. So there was 6 guys there, and they sneak out in the dead of night, get on this train, and they ride, I think, over 1,000 miles. It took them like day and a half, something like that. They get down to Georgia, where all these families together own a private island called Jekyll Island. And on this, they have resort, big mansions that they live in, and they still, here's a picture of the old clubhouse I'll show you about on Jekyll Island. And they,
I guess that's a nice place to hide.
yes.
Oh, wait. I thought of that one. I was like, there's no way he's going to let that one go.
Yeah.
Jekyll Island, and it even sounds, just based on the Jekyll and Hyde, it just sounds creepy, right, when you hear
It does Jekyll
Jekyll Island. So you got there's the clubhouse, one of the cottages that's still in place out there. No, this is a cottage, mind you.
I think you can go there now.
Oh yeah, you can. It's open now. The state of Georgia bought the island, and turned it into basically a tourist area.
So
A lot of-
all agree to meet down there one day and pee on the wall or something?
Sure.
Okay.
But yeah, the cottage, there's still some cottages there. Cottages, I say with air quotes, because one of these cottages has 14 bathrooms.
I was going to say, is that where the help live?
Yeah, probably so. Back in the corner of one of those
They must have
cottages.
had some real early IBS kind of thing if they have that many bathrooms.
Yeah.
Tell one of the bullies to come bring me some salt water for my cankers. Tell y'all, we're trying to fix the banking system, and by fix, I mean make sure it goes to 6 people.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole deal, man, is, all these banking problems over the last quarter of a century especially had been happening, and the people were wanting something different. And what kept happening was the power kept getting concentrated on the big investment banks in New York. And the people didn't like this because they would lose their land, they would lose their house, their bank would go defunct, and basically all the assets from all that stuff would pour out of their communities into the coffers of these New York bankers. So, people were legitimately looking for a solution to that. And these guys got together, and when they were down there, they essentially conspired to set up the Federal Reserve System. And what they set it up to do was not exactly what they were telling the public that it was. So when they got down there, they wrote this act, and that would eventually become the Federal Reserve Act. And they brought it back to Congress, and the group they tried to talk.
That's terrible. I should have started and been like, oh.
The group they tried to talk Aldrich out of actually sponsoring this legislation because, as I described earlier, Aldrich was seen as basically the general manager of the United States Senate. Nothing really got through the Senate without going through him, and he was also closely associated with the banks. And so they were like, dude, Nelson, you can't get this through. Nobody, the Americans won't put up with it. These legislators, they're not going to support it because you're seen to the American people as the exact opposite of what we want to do with a banking bill. So he had some kind of pride in it. He wanted to be seen as the man who created the Federal Reserve System. And so he, hard-headedly went on and introduced the bill where it was defeated soundly. And all the newspapers, ran stories about how this big banker was, trying to take over the banking system. So they're like, well, shit, that didn't work. They all got together, and they decided to have a Democrat introduce it. And I can't remember who that was now. Let's see.
Felix Van Vanderpump.
Well, they had William Jennings Bryan.
I guarantee you, if we go to Google right now and put Felix Vanderpump, that's a real person that'll come up.
Felix von Vanderpoop.
Or at least Felix Vanderpump.
Oh, Vanderpump. Yeah, I bet it is.
It's such a Felix with an F or PH. Felix Vanderpump.
I hope it is. Let's see who introduced the Federal Reserve Act.
Felix Bitterman.
Felix Bitterman. No. If you ask who introduced the Federal Reserve Act, it says President Woodrow Wilson, but that's who signed it. That's not who introduced it. Now, the Senate passed it. Who introduced it?
Vanderpump Rules.
Vanderpump.
The man. Nice tortilla? I give up. Felix doesn't exist.
No, I bet he does somewhere.
He exists somewhere.
Okay, so that did come out of the the first Banking and Currency Committee, chaired by Oklahoma Senator Robert D. Owen. And the House Banking Committee was chaired by Virginia Representative Carter Glass. So these guys basically, under the proposal of President Wilson, who was also elected under the guise of getting the banks under control, they put it in place. Well, because it had so soundly failed when Aldrich tried to introduce it, they had the Democrat committees introduce it and the president introduce it. And they also had Aldrich and other people who were seen as sympathetic to the New York banking industry go out in the press and start writing things saying, oh, this is going to end banking in the United States. It's going to be terrible for the banks. People aren't going to be able to get money and start new business ventures. And so the people in general saw this from Nelson Aldrich and the other big money men, and they said, well, this sounds pretty good that it's, it's going to hurt the banks. That's what we want. We want these banks brought under control. So it actually passed popularly, and, William Jennings Bryan, who was probably the most famous who opposed it, was actually brought on. This tricked him into it too, because they basically told him, oh, we'll change a couple of things to make it the way that you like it. But ultimately, they left the structure so that it can be changed by the Federal Reserve anytime. So what did it do? What did the Federal Reserve Act actually do? Well, Paul Warburg came from Germany, and in Germany, as well as most of Europe, you have central banks over there that basically coin the money for their respective governments. In the United States, it was a little bit different because it stated in the Constitution that all currency or all money was supposed to be gold and silver, and it was supposed to be regulated by the Congress. So it was a lot harder to, say, have a central bank system based on fiat debt at the time, because if you did, you'd be breaking the law. You had to have a certain amount of gold on reserve to be able to lend out money, and then if the money didn't get paid back, you had to collect something and have something of value basically to do banking. Well, the Federal Reserve mostly put an end to all that, and it established there always was an degree of fiat banking, because you could always say, oh, I'll take my money and deposit it in a bank, and then while my money's in the bank, it's earning interest. Well, how's it earning interest? They're loaning it out to other people who are paying it back in interest, and it's making you some money, and then the bank also makes some money. So that was always around. But when we got to the total fiat system, usury that you could define that. The definitions kind of changed over the years. It used to be any amount of interest on any money was considered usury. Now it's kind of considered excessive interest. But yeah, usury is what it is. But it's, at the end of the day, I don't think it's unreasonable that if I put my money in the bank and, the bank lends that money out and I don't spend it, I'm, putting it away, that I don't think it's unreasonable that bank can earn me some money by helping out somebody who does need to spend the money at the time.
My head's gonna explode if I don't make this note, but I can't remember which member of the people that were involved in the Federal Reserve and the banking and stuff. There was a big time banker or businessman or something from New England who was involved in the Jekyll Island thing, but he was also involved in the 1919 Black Sox scandal, where like a couple of the baseball players got accused of throwing the game so people could win bets and stuff. But I don't remember who the person was that was kind of involved in that. That was also involved with the banking and stuff. I just can't remember who it was.
I don't know either. I just thought I might be able to look it up real quick, but I haven't been able to. So yeah, where was I? Okay. So they were basically trying to. They were trying to convince the public that they were taking the saturation of power out of Washington. So one of the things that they did was they split the Federal Reserve up into what they called, they had the Federal Reserve Board, and then they would have 12 different branches all over the country. So you'd have a local branch near you who was supposedly in charge with, of keeping up the currency. Congressman Carter Glass, Senator Latham Owen crafted a central banking bill that occupied a middle ground. Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you there, Alvin. Yeah, they so Carter Glass was one of the ones, but it was essentially the same bill. They had changed a couple of little things in there to please William Jennings Bryan and get him to support it. Because if he supported it, then he was generally seen as a person, and I think he was, even though he was misguided in some areas, I do think he was somebody who did actually try to look out for the people rather than big industry and stuff. Uh, Alvin says Arnold Rothstein.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, dang, Al, you got a lot of noodles in your head. I don't know if that guy actually was connected to the banking thing. It's definitely Arnold.
Arnold Rothstein. That sounds like a guy who would be involved in the Black Sox scandal and the Federal Reserve Bank
He
creation.
had his hands in a lot of really dirty stuff.
Dirty pies, boy, dirty
The
pies.
Brain. His nickname was the Brain. That's so funny.
Did he have a cohort named the Pinky?
Pinky
That was
Rock,
one of his boys.
Pinky Rockefeller. But yeah, they actually called these people the money trust, these big banks. So everybody was for breaking up the money trust, and so they did this by saying, well, we need a central authority to maintain the power of the dollar, make sure that it doesn't crash, make sure people don't lose their whole life savings, but it can't be all surrounded. It can't be all what do you call it? Meshed together in New York. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it can't be all in New York banking power. We've got to spread it out among the country. But in reality, all they did was have a national board that oversaw all that. And yeah, you do have Federal Reserve governors from the different regions, but ultimately the national board can overpower them, and the Fed sets the monetary policy for the whole country. And why is that significant? Well, because the way just in case nobody knows, I mean, probably most of you watching this know, but you guys know how money is created in the United States?
Money printer go brrr.
More or less, but a part of that is basically you have the Congress, right? Here's where we have the two things coming together, because a lot of people say, well, the Federal Reserve is a private entity and it's not anything to do with the federal government. And while it's true, it is a private entity, it's not true that it doesn't have anything to do with the federal government. It actually does work hand in hand with the federal government. It sets monetary policy to benefit the federal government. So when the federal government wants to spend money, they have to do one of two things. They either have to raise taxes to get the money from the people, or they have to borrow the money. Now, raising taxes is never popular among the people, because you're taking money directly from their pockets. You're taking money directly out of them. They see that money every day. But another way to do it is through the Federal Reserve System, where you borrow the money. Well, the Congress, in order, they agree, well, we're going to pass this bill, it's going to do this much spending, and we're going to borrow this much money to do it. So then they go down the street and they have basically, the Federal Reserve buys debt from the government. It pays them. It says, well, we know your government's going to pay us back. It's a stable, it's a stable investment. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. So they loan the money to the government that it needs to do that bill, whatever it may be. Let's say they loan them $1 billion. $1 billion they loan them. And so the government goes out and they write a check for $1 billion. Well, in the modern age, they don't even really have to print most of that money, because all it is a number on a computer screen. So the Federal Reserve will just add $1 billion to the balance of the United States government. Well, then the government, they go out and they spend.
In their pocket.
Yeah, they do that too. But the government, they go out and let's just say $100 to make the math really simple. The government will take that $100 and pay it out to I don't know. Let's just say a clerk or a staffer on Capitol Hill. Well, that staffer on Capitol Hill, they take their $100 and they put it in their bank account, right? So that bank now has $100, and then they say, okay, well, according to the Federal Reserve rules, we can loan out up to $900 on that, because we only have to have in 1/10 of what we have out. And that basically is the formula that the banks figured out. Okay, if we have $100 on loan, we can loan out $900, and the likelihood that we're going to run out of money is so low that that's the stable point to where we can do it, right? So that's how it ran for years and years. And it was backed by gold, though, still. So if you ever wanted to go to the bank and get your money back in gold, you could do that up until the 1930s. When FDR confiscated all the gold, and then in the 1970s, Richard Nixon totally removed us from the gold standard, so there was no tying of the fiat of the money to the gold at all, and it became completely fiat. And at that point, you could basically reinvest that money an infinite amount of time. Each bank could, in essence, make infinite loans out as long as they had enough money coming back in. So we reached the point where we are today, where there's really no limit to the amount of money a bank can loan out based on how much it has. Yeah, it's called fractional reserve banking. That's right, Alvin.
Can we talk about next week? We're going to talk about the creature that came from Jekyll Island, Part 2, in which a bunch of bankers and stuff met in an undisclosed location, and they found a cryptocurrency and didn't tell anybody that it was actually just them because they're trying to find the next, stay ahead of the curve, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought that dang Bitcoin came from a government. It just doesn't. Nobody knows it's this mysterious Japanese guy made it. And it's like, you mean it came from the CIA?
It's possible. I really don't know. I mean, I've wondered for years, where, because it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the currency of the future. Well, who would have more interest in setting up the currency of the future than the government?
Oh no, we got to stop this cryptocurrency. And it's like, I think they just kind of kickstarted it. I'm not saying if you didn't. I'm not saying anybody that invested in it shouldn't keep it, because I think it's the future currency. So it's just the idea that a do-gooder civilian decided to create a cryptocurrency. It just doesn't fly for me. I think it was a reach around,
Well, I'll tell you what I don't know if this debunks that or not, but the fact that they are talking about they've been trying to regulate, maybe that's just like a trick like they did back in, 1910 or 1913 when they passed the CIA, when they passed the Federal Reserve Act. Maybe they're doing a very similar thing. Oh, this Bitcoin's bad. We gotta do something to get around this Bitcoin.
To get people's faith to come back in the dollar. Or whatever.
They're talking about doing the central bank digital currency. Because they need a controllable digital currency that.
No different than they are using digital ones.
It is.
Anyway, they're just putting it on a different computer or something.
That's really exactly what it is. The dollar is essentially a central bank digital currency. There just happened to be a bill that you can still use for it. Alvin here says Bitcoin was a DARPA project that was first use of blockchain technology, and the algorithm it is derived from controls how much it circulates. Yep, that's I don't know where you got that, Alvin, but you are pretty on top of these things.
It sounds more plausible than some do-gooder out in Japan creating something for the world to use. I just don't buy it.
Yeah, I'm going to say you're probably right on that, Alvin.
Over, everybody just decided it was worth this much.
Yep.
I'm going to send you my perfectly good Molly, and you can send me these Clarence dollars that I have no faith that they're actually going to be traded later.
Well, I got to ask, what was the, because right now, one of the things that determines the value of Bitcoin is the amount of energy you have to use in order to actually get it. It's not, you have to run these super expensive GPUs and you have to run these super expensive computer parts like wide open full time to be able to collect any significant amount. It takes industrial mining operations, just rooms full of GPUs running full blast 24 hours a day to collect this stuff at any real amount if you're going to mine it. So how did it initially start off where it was worth doing the computations necessary to mine it? That's what I wonder. Were there just that there were so few transactions that it didn't take as much to do it, or I don't know, because eventually at first it was worth hardly anything, and people started buying it, and that's what gave it the value.
Worth what the dollar was worth, basically, because people were just using it on like the Silk Road and stuff. They weren't really using it for anything else except for illegal. You weren't using it at Starbucks. You were using it to buy Molly for the club this weekend,
Yeah, and you could buy it with Federal Reserve notes and then turn it into something that you could take somewhere else and turn it into Federal Reserve, which is essentially what Federal Reserve notes are. That's what they started off, because if you go back, I have some silver certificates, and if you read them, you would deposit your silver at a bank, and this tradition goes all the way back to the Knights Templar, who we talked about last week. Well, we barely got into them, but they were the first bankers, really, as far as what they would do is they would take your silver on deposit in one location. Say you were leaving from Europe and you're going to the Holy Land, and you didn't want to carry all your gold and silver on the road with you, you would take a note, you would go to the Templars, you would turn in your gold or silver to them, they would write you a note that you could take to another spot that they controlled, say in the Holy Land, and you could redeem it for your gold and silver there. That way you didn't have to travel with all of it. And they would also protect you on the way to go to the Holy Land and keep you from getting your notes stolen. Well, this is kind of similar to what a silver certificate in the United States was. You would deposit some money, which was gold or silver, in the bank. They would give you a certificate that only that bank could produce, and it was verifiable. It was really hard to copyright or counterfeit anything back then. And you would take that to another bank, and they would verify that it was real, and they would in turn give you your gold or silver back. Well, that system is long gone now. There's no gold or silver, and who knows if how much gold the United States has. I'd say they probably do have a good amount of gold and silver somewhere. A lot of nations around the world have been buying up gold and silver over the last few years or last few decades.
Needlessly.
You think?
Can't eat it.
Well, you can do a lot with gold and silver with high technology.
Ooh, look at my Tiffany's rings. Ooh, gold.
Well, I mean,
Give me some
gold's
big
in-
old trees, baby. I can cut them down. I can make a house. I don't know, eat the apples off of it. I think we're pretty whacked in the brain for what we value.
The Templars created a manual blockchain. Oh, okay. It's based on an algorithm that has a finite number of solutions. So in the beginning, it was easy to find a solution. Okay. In the beginning, it was easy to find it. That's why it was low value. Now it's hard to find these solutions. It takes tons of energy to do it. Templars created a manual blockchain technology, says Alvin, later used by the Chinese, called flying money. Now it's used in the Hindu-Muslim word as hawala. Alvin, we need to have you in the studio one day, brother.
I stink, so bring a little bunny style clothespin.
Hey, we're going to have Wilbur Kilb back in the studio.
I smell like patchouli and cat piss. No. God, that would be vulgar, wouldn't it?
He's not kidding. He really does. We just put up with it.
Yeah. Good. I like Wilbur.
Yeah, Wilbur will be back. I think we're going to talk about music and maybe the Satanic Panic.
That'd be interesting.
Because Wilbur grew up in West Virginia. He was the son of I can't remember if it's the son of a sheriff or a deputy. But he told me a great story about, well, I don't know if I want to tell it because I haven't cleared it with him to tell it, but he told me such a very good story about his anti-authoritarian nature and his rebellious nature and what it was like growing up in Boone County, West Virginia in, the 1970s. And it was a really good story. So I hope he'll tell it here too. But Wilbur's going to come back and we're going to be looking at his new product, his Vodka Moon, that he's making. Yeah, so he started his own line of liquor over there at the East Tennessee Distillery, where he runs the print shop, and
he makes actual moonshine.
He makes actual moonshine. That's right.
Sugar Hills or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Where it's basically just potato.
Yeah, the
vodka or whatever. Or
yeah, well, it's just
vodka.
it's just grain alcohol that they call moonshine, which
technically, but the proof is just not there. It still tastes.
They take that high quality, or not high quality, but high alcohol, high proof, and then they water it down. Yeah,
cut it down to about 40 or 50 though, and I'm just saying like that's at that level. That's a mixer. That is not moonshine at that point. I mean, I'm not even saying moonshine is a good thing. It gets you drunk entirely too fast.
You've seen me drink moonshine on the show before, and I take a couple sips, and I'm like, oh, because I treat it just like whiskey, and then it's not just like whiskey.
I remember the last time that happened. After you said the next day, you're like, why'd y'all let me get like that? I was sloppy on the show at the end of it. I was slurring.
Yeah, I sure
Tim
was.
is never going to keep you from.
Oh no, I didn't expect you to keep me from drinking.
I don't
but
police anyone unless you're like a toddler running in traffic. You know?
No, I don't expect anybody to keep me from drinking. But I had like 3 sips as I was going, and I was starting to lose my mental faculties by the end of the show.
That's a rule for me. If you can do shots of it, it's not moonshine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do shots of it if like you're probably Wilbur can at this point if he's tasting his product. But a normal person shouldn't be able to be doing shots of moonshine and not be getting shite-faced.
I'd say Wilbur probably spits it out when he tastes it. Well, you just have a little sip and then you spit it out.
Yeah, I'm going to clip this.
I'm sure he drinks some of it, but...
I'm clipping this one.
Oh, you're an awful human being. You're an awful human being. All right.
I was this close, but I knew somebody else was going to beat me to it. I was this close, man. I was sitting on my computer when I learned about the stupid Jewish space lasers or whatever it was. I was this close to making the damn musical piece that sounded like Pink Floyd with her just doing that rant in the background. But I realized I didn't have time to.
Who are you talking about? Ocasio-Cortez?
Yeah, when she's down there talking like, don't you tell me about blah, blah, blah. When I've heard Republicans talking about Jewish space lasers, and I was like, what?
I gotta look this up real quick and see if I can see it.
Just that phrase, I was like, wow. And I just wanted to take her doing that Jewish space lasers.
still belong on this committee.
Just have like a big over top of it, you know, some big stoner jam.
Oh man, I don't know where it is, but it was so
Literally
funny.
type in Jewish space lasers into YouTube, and I swear you, I guarantee you, it'll come up. Type in Jewish space lasers. It's such a stupid phrase. They should use the. Hey, come on, Jewish people! Why didn't you help us out and shoot that balloon down if you got them lasers up there?
They don't show it.
Jewish space. There you go.
No, that's not what you're
I'll
talking about,
find it
though, is
for
it?
you.
I thought you were talking about with.
I think Clown Planet posted it. So let's see what Clown Planet has.
Yeah, all we see is her Marjorie Taylor Greene's talking about something about.
Do you have? Look, I'm not even subscribed. Do you have those channels where no matter what they're gonna show you? Where it's like, no, I know you're not subscribed to this channel in 6 years, but we're gonna keep putting it on you. Not that I hate the channel. It's just
So now this is pretty funny because I wouldn't be surprised. You know how they like to hit, certain people. I wouldn't be surprised. This says Marjorie Taylor Greene tries to squirm out of Jewish space laser conspiracy theory. Now I remember hearing about this, but let's see if they have any. They're saying she tries to squirm out of it, but then they're also not giving any instance of her actually saying it. So I don't know. I know how the media does.
got it right here.
Yeah, and I saw that the other day.
Yeah.
But that would be just like them for her to have never said that, but now she's the Jewish space laser lady. You know what I mean?
Found it. I'm gonna wait.
Shoot it to the email right quick.
I could do that, or I could just listen to it myself and satiate myself and be a dick.
You could. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not. Giggity.
So I'm going to read this section to you here about William Jennings Bryan while we're waiting on that. So we're talking about how he was a crucial part in the currency reform movement before that, and then he also helped pass the Federal Reserve Act. And this is from...
Is it the Iron Mountain or just Iron Mountain?
The Iron Mountain Hour at gmail.com. This is from altmoney.org, which is an online magazine talking about an alternative money future, but this is their writing here. So I'm going to read from them. To appreciate Bryan's role, one must recall the circumstances that lead during the last decades of the 19th century to widespread pleas for the reform of the existing U.S. currency arrangement. During the Civil War, the Union, seeking to replenish its depleted coffers, passed the National Banking Acts. Those acts provided for the establishment of federally as opposed to state-chartered banks, subject to the requirement that any notes issued by the new banks be fully or at $110 nominally backing for every $100 of notes outstanding, more than fully secured by U.S. government bonds. So, with the number of applications for national bank charters not going high enough, the state banks weren't tempted to convert to them. The authorities responded by subjecting outstanding state bank notes to a 10% tax. So they basically taxed the banks into turning into federal banks, because if they didn't, they were going to pay a 10% tax, and they were either going to go out of business or secure a federal charter. And so very few of them managed to actually survive because they weren't able to issue their own currency. And that's the way, like every state bank, as I was mentioning earlier, they issued their own currency based on the amount of silver and gold that was deposited to them. And they had strict rules for how much they were allowed to have out based on what was in deposit. But let's get on down here to just...
You got space lasers whenever you want it, or you should, unless I sent it.
Okay. Dang, where's the section I wanted here? Well, I can't find the part I want now. But I'll go ahead and hit the Jewish space lasers video there.
I think what he's trying to sum up is that the banking system was already a mess, so we should probably be thanking the people on Jekyll Island for making it better, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Is that the end game? We're thanking them, right? We couldn't function without that dollar bill.
Well, since we've had the Federal Reserve Act, we've had, almost immediately, you had a stock market crash. Yeah.
They go around shooting shit up, nobody cared because they're mad at the bank.
Yeah. Well, you had a banking crash in 2000 and 1921. You had one in 29. You had the Great Depression right after that. A lot of people say those were caused by banking policies.
Called, like easing. I think you're using that.
Yeah, quantitative easing.
It's easing. They're just,
They're easing. Well, eventually what it goes down to, I started making this point earlier. The government, if they spend that money, if they have to tax you for it, you're a lot less likely to re-elect them. If they've raised your taxes and taken money out of your pocket directly in order to pay for something, you're a lot less likely to vote to re-elect them. Now, if instead of having to raise their taxes, you can borrow the money and inflate the money supply by pumping more into it, by all these banks being able to create pretty much unlimited amounts of currency now, you can very slowly take the money from them by lowering their purchasing power. So, when I was a kid, if you bought an orange juice, it was, like $2 and you got 64 ounces, something like that. It was somewhere around $2. Well, now you pay, $4.99, and it went down. First it was 59 ounces. Now it's 52 ounces. And so you pay more for even less. And that's called shrinkflation. A lot of times is what they call that, where they try to trick you into not realizing you're not buying as much. But ultimately,
all the time it's like they lower
the wrong one.
And lower it, slowly lower it, and you're like, oh, the price. They're like, yeah, we haven't raised the price on this, but you're like, you get like 20% less.
Yeah.
Than what you did.
Well, it's like the ice cream. It always used to be a half gallon of ice cream, and now most of them are like 48, a quart and a half. Mm-hmm. So you got only 3/4 of the product you used to get, but it's the same money or more. But that's the way they avoid you noticing the inflation. So basically, little by little over the years, we give more and more of our income back.
Frozen pizzas are bad for it too.
Yeah, we give more and more of our income back to the government because they actually have to pay that money back through taxes. That's the only thing they do. And it's just when the government votes to spend the money or when they take those tax money in, they don't actually use that tax money to pay for any new spending. They only use it to pay the interest on the debt that they've created by borrowing money from the Federal Reserve. So ultimately, that's what it comes down to, is by the time we get that money, it's worth less than it is when the banks lend it out. So who gets it first? Well, your government agencies, your giant international contractors, your military, your banking system, everybody at the top, your giant developers who are, building lots of huge buildings, and people who already have plenty of money to spend. When they get that money, they get to spend it before the prices have the chance to adjust to the amount of money in supply, or amount of monetary supply. So by the time we get that money, it's had time to adjust, and now it's worth less, and we can buy less with it than the bankers could when they first created the currency. All right, now let's watch this video real quick.
AOC must have gone to the Billy Graham School of Preaching or something if you watch how she acts.
Oh, Lordy.
I hate that stuff. It just comes across as fake. I don't know why people buy into it, but they do.
Oh, shit.
Talk about here, also one of the disgusting legacies after 9/11 has been the targeting and racism against Muslim Americans throughout the United States of America, and this is an extension of that legacy. Consistency, there is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack, except
This lady's like,
the
she right.
racism and the violence against women of color in this body.
Mm-hmm.
I had a member of the Republican Caucus threaten my life, and you all and the Republican Caucus rewarded him with one of the most prestigious committee assignments in this Congress. Don't tell me
That's right.
about consistency.
How do people sit up there and scream like that, not knowing they're not going to be looked like Hitler one day?
Tropes.
This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology in my life.
Like, that's all you need. Like, if you're the one screaming, I'm saying, just rule of thumb for me. I grew up at a weird church. I have a real good piece of shit meter, and that's a charlatan. That's just somebody that knows as long as she keeps screaming, people are going to keep giving her money to say whatever that gets the. If I can get you to get emotionally reacted, you're going to give me money, and that's what she's figured out.
And we could do something like that too. We want to be like, I am so sick of these bankers taking all our money, blowing up the products, blowing up the prices. We don't get any of it. Tim and I are sitting here. We're struggling, starving musicians. We're poor men on the ground. And who's fighting for us? Who?
You don't want to see me go there. Like, there's a reason I'm using cigarettes to start my cult. I'm a little too convincing when it comes to the rah, rah, rah. So I'm going to start out with all the relaxing stuff. Hey, y'all, let's not burn nothing down.
Chicken head.
Let's all go camp out, smoke Marlboro Reds, and maybe do it in a weed legal state so we can all be doing something cool at the same time. But if we can't do it Tennessee, we'll just do shots of liquor. We'll get Will to bring some moonshine, and we'll smoke cigarettes and do liquor, and that'll be the whole cult.
I hope you'll bring us some.
Fancy and get those Camel Reds if you can find them.
I'll bring them Reds.
If I'm going to be in your
the red
cigarette cult,
then they'll get us for being communists or something.
no, if I'm going to be in your cigarette cult, you're going to need to have an assortment of cigarettes. It's going to have to be, I'm going to need some Winstons, full flavor, and I'm going to need them whenever I want them.
Well, Spill's allergic to cigs.
Well, Spill, we can
I'll
find
include
you.
cornbread. How's that? It'll be the cigarette and cornbread cult. You're always cooking cornbread, so you can be my cornbread cooker.
But no dipping in the milk. It's not allowed. That's against the adherence. That's against the tenets of our
dip in
cult.
milk as long as the cornbread itself is dry as a bone.
Okay.
I don't like that. Well, I'm really indifferent to cornbread. I'm gonna say something sacrilegious. I like cornbread fritters better. I don't like having 99% of the moisture sucked out of my tongue when it goes in my mouth. I don't like that. It's like eating a persimmon.
Alvin, we're going to have to make it a Copenhagen coat for Alvin. Hey, Buddy Bell.
Okay.
Glad to have you back, brother. He says no cigs, whiskey, and cornbread sounds good. All right.
We can do that.
We can make a compromise. It can be the whiskey.
Well, I'm giving cigs out because I just feel like God wants me to. But we'll do the liquor and cornbread. We'll just add it to the mix. Some point I'll worry about food and shelter.
The whiskey and cornbread are the lesser deities. The cigs are the number one.
Yeah, there's something driving it. The nicotine is the God behind it.
That's right. I saw a Tucker Carlson bit where he had a cigar smoker on. Apparently they are trying to, apparently this cigar smoker was talking about how they're trying to pass a 95-cent cigar tax in New York.
Okay.
And Carlson's, now I'm not a regular Tucker viewer, but I just happened to see this one, and I don't know how he normally feels about things like this, but he said, basically he's like, nicotine frees your mind, man. They don't want you smoking cigs. They want you smoking weed because THC is totally unregulated in New York. But they want to charge you 95 cents or 95% to smoke a cigar. It's only 75% tax on cigarettes. So what is the game here? Why are they trying to stop you from enjoying a cigar more than they're trying? Or is it just because more wealthy people tend to smoke cigars? But there's a lot of people smoke Philly blunts.
I think it's because, the motive, whether or not there's something secretly been pulled behind the scenes or not, the motive behind it is New York is using health and consequences to get a lot of dumb stuff passed. Same reason as you can smoke weed, but you can't buy a 64-ounce big gulp from the Quickie Marts there anymore. They did all kinds of canned plastic straws, that sort of thing. I would make an argument with Tucker, though, for most personality types. The majority, as a former psychology student, on drugs, most personality types, if they smoke weed, they tend to calm down and be less productive, but be more productive after the fact because they thought, But cigarettes, nicotine actually make your average normal individual more productive for reasons. So I don't know. Maybe Tucker's onto something. Maybe
it does speed up your brain. And I used to have a friend and mentor who, if we were working on something together, and I stopped to take a smoke break, he'd say, "Nope, you got to learn to smoke with the cigarette, while you're working, because if you don't have, what was it he said? If you can't smoke while you're working, then you shouldn't be smoking." And that was his whole thing. Is he felt like it increased his production or productivity and efficiency to smoke. But if you took a break, then you were giving up that advantage that you had gained.
I think that you can use nicotine to an advantage. I think one of the issues is people lean on it too hard as a crutch. Like they just have, because it's legal and you can do it anywhere, they just have access to this drug all the time. But I think if you did do nicotine in moderation, like maybe in the morning, maybe at lunch, maybe it could be very beneficial. It's what they call the harm reduction method in psychology. That even if the smoking hurts your lungs, if the idea of keeping your mind healthy throughout the day, it's actually better for the whole system. I don't have a problem with nicotine. I actually have more of a problem with smoking because when you can just do it that available, anything would become a very huge vice. Most people aren't nicotinists though. Most people are just smokers. They're immune to the
Yeah.
nicotine at that point. I actually don't mind nicotine. I take so much nicotine that if you gave me a hit off one of your vapes right now, I'd get spinny. That's how little I use it. But I think it's a beneficial drug in moderation.
As far as I kind of have an agreement with that. This thing right here has made it far more easy for me to enjoy nicotine everywhere, versus I've always been somebody who is pretty moderate on it. And that's if I do buy a pack of smokes now, which I do sometimes, it usually lasts me a week to 2 weeks. Whereas this thing, it cost me, I don't know, $20 to smoke it for a month or something like that. So it's a little bit cheaper than smoking cigarettes, but I do tend to just sit around and smoke this a lot more, vape this a lot more than I do if I have a cigarette.
You can.
Yeah, because I can sit right in my house and do it, and it's not going to stink it up. It's not going to make my clothes smell bad. If I do a cigarette, I'm going to go outside, and then I'm also committed to being outside for a few minutes when it's cold.
I think most people are actually into the smoking, though, the ritual of the breathing. I think they're
Yeah,
more into
absolutely.
that than they
Yeah, I
actually
definitely
nicotine.
am, and the same with that with like smoking weed. When I used to smoke a lot of weed, it was more the communal act of passing the bowl around and inhaling it that I enjoyed than actually, getting a buzz from it. There wasn't the buzz so much because, you can only get so high off weed, but you tend to sit around and continue smoking with your friends and when you're doing that kind of thing.
Well, the solo endeavor with the actual cigarette, which I guess you could use for weed too, it almost takes the place of like centering, which I guess you could replace with meditation and stuff.
Yeah.
That's why that works. I mean, so you going outside and having a cigarette,
Yeah,
it's actually like prayer.
Yeah,
It's
you're
that
centering.
meditation. You're centering yourself. It's
and especially when you can do it as a community, when you have the whole group go out and smoke together, and you're all, feeling that same vibe. Let's see, I've got something from, let me catch up here. Alvin says, nicotine and caffeine share one common characteristic. They'll both perk you up when you're down. They'll calm you down when you're worked up. Yeah. And it's probably not the chemicals you're allergic to, Spill says. It's probably the tobacco, and Alvin agrees. And yeah, there's so many chemicals in there. And I was talking, when I said Winston Full Flavor, the reason I buy Winston Full Flavor when I do smoke is they are just tobacco and water. Now, of course, you have the paper, which is fire retardant. Yeah. So, how good?
Fun fact: it's like supposed to be fire resistant.
Yeah.
But it's like last night I was talking to my dad and we were in the garage. He had a cigarette sitting in the ashtray. Son of a gun burnt all the way through because he.
Just forgot about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll keep burning, no problem.
It's like, yeah, that doesn't change anything besides putting glue into your system.
I have a workaround for the glue though for the cigarette cult. Is I would like to use the they call it Indian tobacco, but I don't really have a better name for it. It's got a long name. 19% nicotine as opposed to your pitiful 5% in your cigarettes. So we're going to get really zonked off our asses on nicotine, corking it up our nose.
Snuff.
That's how they did it. Apparently, there's an old document about the people going and having like a May party where all the natives are dancing around the maypole, and all the people down on the ground at the Pilgrims camp or whatever, the Puritans, they were just mortified that these couple of guys went up there and decided to party with them. And that's the scene. They sent a guy for her to go spy on it, and that's one of the scenes was they were taking a hooter or whatever that you put over your nose, and essentially blowing the smoke up into people's faces. Like the most awful gravity bong ever or something. But they were doing it with nicotine, but it wasn't like our nicotine. It was like that kind of specific nicotine. They grow in this one kind of tobacco, and it's like 20% caffeine or nicotine. Can you imagine that hitting a Pilgrim? 20% nicotine, all of a sudden hitting some guy who's never, a pilgrim. I mean, just probably had a religious experience.
Try to do something here. Sorry, guys. Give me just a second. There we go.
I'd probably have a religious experience if somebody blew that up my nose.
He probably would.
Probably blew up my ass. What's up, Crowley?
Oh, y'all should have seen the photo. If you saw last week's when we were talking about what Crowley thought the third eye was. You can never look at some of these I follow a lot of Freemasonic pages, and
if you mix Aleister Crowley's example with Jim Carrey's opinion on what the all-seeing Illuminati is, you get.
Let me show you this.
Salad.
If you saw last week, let's see if you can read it.
No, you can't read it.
You can't read it, but anyway, it shows an eye. It says, "I have 3 eyes, two to look, one to see." Bellamore. Now, if you watch last week's episode, you know why
I'm not
that's
talking
funny.
about this one.
Yeah, if if you watch last week's episode, you know why we're laughing at that. If you didn't, go back and watch it, and you'll find out. So yeah, this bill says
it's got
pathetic
something
5%.
to do with the Golden Dawn.
Yeah, and yeah, it's
I'm starting to think it's a urine reference.
well. I mean, I guess we've pretty much finished up on Jekyll Island. It was a big scam all along for bankers to take more control of the banking system in the United States, and it's kind of gotten us where we are today, where if you think the bankers ran and the monopoly men ran the world back then, it's just good times I don't know how many nowadays, and pretty much every bit of money that's circulated around the world has some relation to, I mean, even the IMF and the World Bank, I'm pretty sure they borrow, and the Bank of International Settlements, who do all these loaning out money to third world countries and stuff, pretty sure they buy their bonds from the Federal Reserve, who, buys those bonds from the United States government. So all that money basically gets washed through the Federal Reserve System, and all of the other countries have central banks of their own, the Bank of England and so on and so forth. And there was, a lot being said about the nations that the United States decided to invade in the early part of this century, with Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, Libya being the nations that did not have central banks left. And we look at that Project for a New American Century document that came out in 1999 that listed 7 nations, including those, and Somalia, which was another one. I don't remember the last one. But those were the nations that they were looking to invade, and a lot of people have put it together that they didn't have central banks, that their banking systems were based on gold, and that they had large gold deposits. And now we see the central bank kind of teetering on the brink, with different countries like Russia and China working together with their own economic orders, where they're going to be buying fuel, buying oil, and I think even Saudi Arabia was included in this, where they're going to be buying oil in units other than dollars. So the central bank of the world, the Federal Reserve Note, is kind of under threat for the first time in a really long time. So we'll just have to see where that goes. But
It won't go anywhere. I see, if you look closely in that window up there, you can see John Podesta being raised properly.
I don't see him. Just I hope there's none of John or Tony Podesta's art up there. We couldn't show that on YouTube.
He's been up there being raised for how to upbring Chester.
Oh, goodness. Oh, me. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Andrew Jackson, because Andrew Jackson was, he was famous for a lot of things, really. I mean, the Battle of New Orleans,
Having wooden teeth.
Did he have wooden teeth?
No, they called him Old Hickory, but there was like a rumor that it was because he had hickory teeth. And then there was a rumor that
I thought it was because he was an old, hard, stout son of a bitch.
There's all kinds of them. There's even like a rumor that he used to make insubordinate soldiers chew on hickory sticks when they were doing hard labor. I don't know. But just being called Old Hickory sounds more reasonable that he was just a hard son of a bitch.
Well, we definitely know he was. It says here that this is from, he was given that from his troops after crushing the British at the Battle of New Orleans. Now, I've often thought I would like to make, to have a rap version of that song about we fired our guns and the British kept coming. I think that would be.
Time I can make it for you.
I'll make it at some, but
you won't catch me rapping, but I'll mix your beat.
Yeah, that'd be good. I won't put my face on it, and you'll never know it's me if I rap it. I would just do it for fun, and you definitely wouldn't see my face on it. But now here I am telling you. So if you see that rap come out, you'll probably gonna know it's me. But I do want to tell you, Andrew Jackson. He was one of his greatest achievements. He figured. I mean, he did a lot of things that people didn't appreciate so much. The Indian Removal Act.
On the list in the White House.
Like doing what?
Partying in the White House. He believed the White House belonged to the people.
Yeah.
So he would just let people camp out on the front lawn.
Throw big speech.
And he left the front door open because he thought if a citizen of the United States thought he could get to the president and talk to him, he deserved to listen to him. So the result was Andrew Jackson was just exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
Wouldn't let him alone.
It was a lot different time.
It backfired on him.
Yeah.
Being too friendly to the plebs.
Yeah.
Is that correct, plebs?
Yeah, that's what they would call us. But Andrew Jackson, he killed the bank in the United States. He said they were often trying to set up the First National and Second National U.S. Bank, where they were trying to put this scheme in place years before. And Jackson was basically the one who put an end to it long story short.
Never
And I
worked
think that's
before.
why they put him on the $20 bill to be,
So to be
the-
a dick to him.
yep, piss on his face for all eternity, essentially.
Yeah, I mean,
Why else would
why
they
else
put
would
him
you
on
put
there?
him on there?
Yeah.
That'd be like putting Paula Dean as a diet representative and telling her she doesn't have to change anything. You cook them with butter, it's okay. We still want you to represent our Nutri-Grain bars that you don't have to eat.
Well, yeah, then that would be like, putting, I don't know, who's a famous anti-war activist.
Jimmy Carter.
Okay, yeah, I don't know about that. Let's
Say,
say,
he's a humanitarian. He's the one
Yeah,
doing like the worm nets and stuff.
Yeah,
getting parasites out and stuff.
yeah, no, Carter was a different kind of, I don't know. We'll get into Carter another time. But I was just thinking of somebody like, Cindy Sheehan. I don't know if you remember her. That'd be like putting her face on your Tomahawk missiles. She was somebody who her kid had died in Iraq. She was famous about 10 years ago for,
Oh, I don't know if I should do this one. The guy that used to do Greg Walsh, is that his name? The guy that used to do the missing people and America's Most Wanted. Is that his name?
oh, John Walsh.
John Walsh.
Yeah.
It would be like using John Walsh's face to represent human trafficking.
Yeah. Well, his daughter is actually on Twitter, and I follow her, and she claims that he is involved in human trafficking, and that she was
Upside down world.
Yeah, that he
Makes
was
sense to me.
that was why he was in charge of all that, because he was involved with it. Now that's his daughter talking. I've not seen any
Okay.
evidence of that, but that's what she says.
Well, using that same evidence on the slim chance that she's not just a clout chaser. I mean, that makes sense. You always find that stuff out though, like kind of like you find out Jimmy Savile, who used to have all those children's charities and stuff, was actually just cornholing all of them.
Yep.
And then because they're always setting themselves up to be for the nefarious purpose.
Maybe he was just finding the third eye.
Exactly.
Maybe that's
it.
all he was doing.
Okay, well,
Hanging
here's
out with
another one.
Crowley.
Why was the Queen, I think, the one that just died? You know what she did for most of her life? She ran the blood bank of England.
Yeah.
American Red Cross. Vampire. She was just bathing in it. That's why there's always a shortage. The Queen was getting worried about her looks.
This does say that Jimmy Savile was an occultist
Man,
witch.
he looks like a damn
An occultist
demon. Look
witch
at
who
that
worshipped
thing.
Aleister Crowley.
God, look at him. I mean, look at that. That's a nightmare. Imagine that fucker chasing you.
Yeah.
Nude.
With the heart on. Jesus. He's peeking out of his robe.
That's probably like who they like. That's probably like the inspiration for Freddy Krueger right there.
Probably.
I don't even, no burns needed. He's
He's
still
a
just as
little lad that
scary.
likes berries and cream.
Dude, that guy's a monster. They found like I don't even remember. It was dozens of dead people on that island.
All right, I'm going to read you a story here. It's going to take a minute, so strap in.
Go for it.
And it's a few paragraphs long, but I'm just going to read the whole thing because this is from Wanda L. Harrell, and it is a true story about the Jackson Love horse race, and it is how one of her fourth great grandfather met with Andrew Jackson, and they
Jackson
became
Love
friends.
sounds like an R&B group. Jackson Love.
I will tell you, man, I love some Jackson Lowe guitar tone. He's got one of my favorite guitar tones of all of classic rock.
Okay.
I think his lead guitar tone is freaking great.
I have a Lee Jackson guitar tone.
You do, don't
Since
you?
we're going to keep doing this little.
This Jackson whole thing. Yeah, I used to have a Jackson Flying V guitar, or one of those offset Vs. What do you call those damn things? The Randy Rhodes, and it's the Rhodes, but it's
Randy Rhodes the one that had the staggered
yeah.
one, and just the normal.
I didn't have the Rhodes.
V.
Yeah, the King V. Yeah, that's it. All right, well, let's get into Rex. Not Randy Jackson. It's going to be a no for me, dog. Let's get into Andrew Jackson. Around 1787, a young Andrew Jackson traveled from Carolina to practice law in what would become Tennessee. He stayed with the Christopher Taylor family in Jonesboro while getting his feet wet in his new profession.
North Carolina.
From his home across the mountains, he'd bought with him several hunting dogs, a brace of fine dueling pistols, and a superior racing steed. Jackson was a sporting and gaming man from head to toe and had an obsession for the rich man's sport of horse racing. He hadn't been in the area long before he heard about Victor of All, a horse purported to be the fastest in the area. The owner, Colonel Robert Love, was a large landowner in Greasy Cove, and his properties was a racetrack along the Nolichucky River. Now, this Greasy Cove, it's over off of... it's right off the Irwin exit if you're going up the hill to...
It's over all by Campfire Creek or some other hillbilly.
If you're starting to go up the hill to go over to North Carolina,
Slope to get up there.
it is, yes.
That crept
Greasy.
up on me, actually.
But
I
it's,
didn't mean to make fun of Kentucky-ness. Now, Kentucky has the stupidest street names ever. I'm sorry, though. It's not like Interstate 84. It's like Big Bone Lick Drive. I mean, at least it gives you something to crack. One of them was what was it? Dry Rage Creek. I was like, God, there's up there. Anyway, sorry. I realized I made a regionalist joke, but it's fair. I'll make fun of people in Massachusetts for not being able to drive. In Kentucky, you got some whack street.
I got to tell you though, North Carolina has the worst drivers. If I see somebody causing I'm saying over in our area, the problem
Of our area, yes, yes.
in our area, the worst drivers are the North Carolinians. They cause more traffic problems than any other state placements in this area.
Speed the hell up in the left lane on 26
Yep.
either. It's like, okay, it goes to 65. They're doing 63.
Well, I've been driving in the left lane since Asheville. No reason to change now, you know. But that area right there on the way over the mountains to Asheville on I-26, that is the last exit in Irwin. That is the Jackson Love Parkway or Jackson Love Highway. And so anyway, Jackson, he hears about this horse that Love owns, and he challenges him, and Love accepts the challenge. So the day for the race is set, and word spread. Yes, he did.
Yes, I do mean Aleister Crowley or Barbara Bush's dad, Alvin.
Yep.
We think so.
Yeah, we know all about that ritual out there in the desert where they created Barbara Bush, the moon child. Yeah,
Created her with like melted plastic from the air at Roswell.
No, it was the Trinity test there that actually created the golem known as Barbara Bush. But anyway, we'll save that one for another one. Yeah, Alan, I'm telling you, you need to come in the studio with us one day, man. I'm gonna hit you up. The date for the race was set, and word spread like wildfire of the upcoming event. While the jockeys readied the horses for competition, settlers from as far away as Wolf Laurel, which is now Abingdon, Virginia, traveled to Greasy Cove to witness the race. Over spits of roasting pigs and demijohns of hard liquor, many bets of money, a land combination or both were placed that late summer or early day of fall in 1788. And that sounds like a lot like the White House lawn when Jackson became president. Spit roasts and liquor, and not that kind of spit roast. Get your mind out of the gutter. Jackson's chosen jockey took ill not long before the race. So Jackson was going to have somebody ride the horse for him, but he ended up having to ride the horse himself. Yeah. So although it was considered an unfair advantage, Jackson asked for permission from Colonel Love to ride the race on his own horse. The young Jackson was probably more surprised than anyone that the colonel granted his request. As the red-haired Jackson mounted his steed and took his position at the starting line, Colonel Love calmly observed the spectacle. Now, Jackson was a long and lanky son-of-a-bitch, so he would not have been the ideal candidate to ride this horse in a race.
I was like, did it say that? He's a long lanky son.
No, that was me.
Great website.
Amidst unfathomable tension, the starting shot was finally fired. As the sound echoed across the surrounding hillsides, yelling onlookers watched while the horses vanished into a cloud of dust. As they made the corner turn, the view was clear. The horses were neck and neck. Suddenly, Victor of all sprinted ahead to take the lead and win the race. Among the crowd's uproar, an angry and defeated Jackson dismounted. The tall, wiry, and fiery-tempered Jackson of Scot-Irish descent was shaking with anger as he began spitting out harsh criticisms toward Colonel Love. Although Colonel Love, also of Scot-Irish descent, was known for a gritty disposition, he listened as Jackson shouted all manner of invectives at him. However, when Jackson denounced the entire Love family as a band of land-grabbing pirates, Love stood still no longer and fiercely retorted, "You are nothing but a damn long, gangling, sorrel-tipped soap stick." Fisticuffs broke out between the two. Yeah. Fisticuffs broke out, and before too many blows were landed, the friends of both parties interceded, leading both men off the grounds in different directions. Andrew Jackson eventually left the vicinity, setting up in the Nashville area of the state to practice frontier law. He became the first man elected from Tennessee to the House of Representatives and Senate, fought in the War of 1812 and the Second Seminole War, after which he became the first governor of the newly acquired United States territory of Florida. As for Colonel Love, he held on to much of the land he owned around Greasy Cove. He served in the North Carolina legislature while Greasy Cove was still considered part of North Carolina, and until the state of Franklin failed, and then it became part of Tennessee shortly after that in 1796. In 1792, after his family had moved across the mountains to Buncombe County, he was elected to the state senate of North Carolina. He helped form the Haywood County, and in 1809 he gave birth. He gave the land to build the town of Waynesville.
What was that?
To build the town of Waynesville, North Carolina. Colonel Love also helped establish the final state boundary between North Carolina and Tennessee in 1821. Now, there's no record of when or how or where the two men made amends, but it happened at some point over the years, and it's said that Jackson would not have won the presidency without the assistance of his one-time arch-rival, Colonel Love, whose influence on North Carolina voters made the difference between Jackson's first unsuccessful bid in 1824 and his second successful bid in 1828 for the presidency. So it came to be that although defeated by Colonel Love's victor of all, Andrew Jackson emerged the victor of all in the most important race of life, triumphant pursuit of office, the 7th president of the United States. And first president from Tennessee. We've had a few more. Had Polk and Johnson. I think that's it, right?
Gore.
Gore was vice, but he never won that. Never won that.
Hey, he beat Bush.
He did beat Bush apparently, but Supreme Court had other. But I think like whichever hell. I mean, it might have been a different hell under Gore, but it'd have been a hell. It'd have been, it might have been an environmental.
Imagine him giving speeches and stuff. Just sound like him reading off the.
I am the
convenient
enter
truth
of
all
the
time.
internet, so
Have you heard
I
the-
should get to the
Have you heard
shoes.
the poetry?
No, I
He wrote a
haven't.
book of poetry.
Oh
And he did
gosh,
an audio sample of it, and it's
I'm gonna read an Al Gore poem for you here.
Have you heard him?
No.
Blistering. What was it? Blistering deserts cook the wasteland that once was earth. It's just like apocalyptic stuff, and it's.
Let's find it here. I'm gonna read you a few lines from it. Here is the poem in its full form. One thin September soon, a floating continent disappears in the midnight sun. Vapors rise as fever settles on an acid sea. Neptune's bones dissolve.
Which means nothing.
Snow glides from the mountain, ice fathers floods for a season. A hard rain comes quickly. Then dirt is parched, kindling is placed in the forest for the lightning's celebration. Unknown creatures take their leave unmourned, horsemen ready their stirrups. I don't know if I can, that's almost done. Passion seeks heroes and friends. The bell of this city on the hill is rung. The shepherd cries, the hour of choosing has arrived. Here are your tools, brought to you by Pfizer.
Literally brought you by Pfizer.
Oh, isn't everything these days?
It's all over it too.
That stroke? That heart attack?
I mean, no, for real though. Okay, I like the environment. I don't. One of the reasons I dislike, for anyone that's out there wondering, one of the reasons I dislike Al Gore so much is he's such a poor representation of like that's your movement. You want to save the planet's environment, and that's who the world gives you to represent as your avatar. And I just don't like that. It's insulting.
Yeah, you have to either that or Greta Thunberg. Like,
Yeah.
what about like everybody who were shown
Grifters.
as an environmental? They're all they're saying is pay more money to the government so we're not so hot.
They're all grifters.
And nobody is talking about the fact that this big trash mass floating around in the ocean, trash
We
continent
cleaned it up.
from
Kid from Denmark.
Oh,
Figured
good.
out you could put a bunch of nets out there, and nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody
Well,
wants
good.
to talk about the kid from the Netherlands. You figured out, hey, it would actually be cheaper for us not to stop using carbon. It'd actually be a lot cheaper just for us to suck the existing carbon out of the atmosphere.
we don't need
That makes
to
total
we need
sense,
we need
actually.
carbon. No, we need carbon for the trees.
I'm not a scientist. I'm not on
Um,
the side of whether or not carbon is
And
doing
then
whatever.
now there's a fungus species that eats plastic.
Mm.
Oh, there's mealworms. They made mealworms that eat plastic too. And it's like, gosh, you guys are just creating new predators. Like, what happens when there's a fungus that eats humans?
Yeah, that's like, isn't that the plot of The Last of Us when that like that mushroom fungus that
Mhm.
turns the ants into zombies, doesn't it?
It
Isn't it-
crosses over to
yeah.
humans and starts doing it to us, which I always
Yeah.
thought was a more believable T-virus, but that wasn't a widespread thing back then for people to know that fungus did that. It's actually not
Yeah.
a very new. It's actually a pretty relatively new thing for them to know about is these brain parasites. One of my favorite ones is the slug one. Have you seen it?
Hmm.
It's This is I don't know if
The
this
butterfly one.
no, I don't know if this is proof of God or if this is proof that the universe is just extremely strange, or Shiva in the this is a real thing. A slug eats on a leaf, right, and it eats some bird poop because the slug digs that bird poop. There's a parasitic egg inside of it that goes through the snail's digestive tract. And by the time it hatches and gets full length, it crawls up into the snail's eye. All right, two of them go up to the snail's eyes. And then this worm starts dancing. it's twerking.
To
Okay.
get the bird to come eat it?
Yeah, the worms are colorful, so they start twerking, literally shaking their ass up inside. The poor snail's eyes are just going crazy. These worms going crazy, and the bird comes down, bites off the snail's eyes, which apparently is not a problem. Snail can regrow his eyes, that retreats his shells. But now the worm goes into the bird's digestive tract, which just happens to be the only place that the eggs can exist. There's some kind of acid in the bird poop that makes the eggs fertile or whatever. Bird takes a shit on the leaf. One of that snail, maybe it grows an eye back, I don't know. Another snail comes along and continues the cycle. Like, they literally, the parasite can only exist if a snail eats it, and then if a bird eats that, and then it takes a shit. It's like it literally only lives inside of other creatures the whole life cycle.
So it's a lot like the toxoplasmosis.
Toxo.
Yeah, tell us
Yes.
about that, Dustin. I know you know about that. You're the cat man.
We definitely have it, by the way. We've had cats for a long time, so we're definitely crazy
Pretty
people.
much, almost like I don't remember what the number was. Like a very, very, very large amount of humans actually have it, but it just your body makes like a cyst around it, and it you know, as long as you're not basically like actively pregnant at the time, it's pretty much it's not going to hurt anything.
So what it does in a cat though, it lives in
it lives in cat fecal matter, and it's like a little virus. It's like it works if there's cat shit around, and then there's rats. If the rats somehow get into it and get it, it makes the rats be not scared of their predator.
they're attracted to the cat, and
Yeah.
the smells of the cat. And it's because the bacteria or the is it a virus? It's a virus, isn't
I
it?
think it's a type of.
I don't remember now.
No.
No.
It's an is. So, you know, they think it's linked to.
It's a parasite. Okay.
They think it's linked to what is it? Not deviant behavior in humans, but less what is it?
Left
You don't have a good
self-preservation.
self-survival. Yeah, like you'll do wilder things. You'll be less self-preserved.
Well, that's kind of what it does for the cat. Is it lowers its or for the rat, it lowers its self-preservation. It makes it not afraid of the cat because the toxoplasmosis parasite inside the rat is trying to get back to the cat so it can have its babies in the cat and continue the cycle. So, yeah, it says here most people with the parasite do not have symptoms. But yeah, just imagine if that did, you know, find some way to have us act in, you know, what if that parasite decided it needed to be eaten by tigers?
But I
So
think the lack of fear is an after effect of it. They think it's like it does something permanent to your brain after you've had it to make you less afraid. And that the only reason they kind of know that is they've done studies amongst people who do extreme shit, and there's a large amount of people who do like BMX riding and crazy like rafting and crap like that, and free mountain climbing and crap. Almost all those people have some form of have had toxoplasmosis in the past. Because what other nutcase is going to climb the side of a mountain with no ropes and shit, you know? So they think that has something to do with it. And now they're starting to think that maybe toxoplasmosis has something to do with people who, for some reason, I've got 2 cats. My house don't stink, right? But there's some people that get cats,
you can smell it as soon as you walk in the door.
and it's just like, why do you smell like urine and pennies? Like, it's just such a strong smell. I don't see how they can sit in the same room with it, but it makes sense because, like you said, the
They don't
rat
even
is
notice
actually
it.
attracted to the cat. Hey, come kill me. And I think that's why some people get used to that just disgusting smell of the cat pee, because it's like you're so entwined with it now that your body actually thinks you need to be near it. You know,
You remember said person at a establishment we used to work at?
there's been a couple.
He worked overnights, and you know.
Is he related to Dixie Chick song? Is it Earl?
Earl
Okay,
had
I'm sorry,
to die.
Earl, if you catch this, but man, you smell like ass, dude. I'm not kidding. I'm sorry. It's been long enough now, and Earl's never gonna find this. Earl, I'm sorry. Worst smelling person I've ever smelled to this day.
Poor
okay?
Earl.
He was all the way on aisle 3, and we were on aisle 11. And we could smell this guy, and we decided one night, with this giant distance, we were gonna go talk to him and be like, "Man, you gotta go home and take a shower." It was bad enough that we all got together, wrote him a note that telling him to please take a shower. He had left 2 hours ago, and the whole store still smelled like him, and it smelled like someone with the worst body. Okay, I'll put it in a different way. It smelled like 2 high school let's say college, so I'm not being that too nasty. 2 college football teams got together, played a scrimmage in the mud for longer than a normal game, and they all got together in the locker room and had gay sex afterwards.
Mm.
If you could bottle that smell, that's what he smelled like that night. It was sex. He had banged his old lady or something before he came into work, and he was like, dude, I can't smell it. That is rotten Korean food. I don't know. It's just, it was, I still smell it to this day, people. It's been 20 years, I'm telling you.
No, I think I know the smell.
Who was the stinky guy besides Earl? I can't think of anybody top Earl.
There was a
I
guy.
don't know if it could top it, but I thought his name was Tim as well.
It was. It was, I'm not going to say his last name because I can't remember, but it was Tim What's-His-Face. He always had the Jeff Gordon jacket on.
There was a guy I used to work with. I used to work with in the wire mill, and so this guy, he would work.
He had dates. Did you know that? Women still dated him. That was so weird about when I found that out.
If he smelled like cat pee, they might have just been cat ladies that
It may have been.
and they might not have noticed it.
The toxin is actually active in their brain.
Yeah, it was drawing
Like
them towards a
cat pee.
a dangerously
That's
dirty
this
human
guy.
being.
Poor Tim was pretty gross too, though.
They actually did make him leave sometimes and go shower.
I used to work with a guy who he worked at the wire mill, and he would actually be cutting. He worked as a lumberjack or whatever the hell you call it, logger, and all the way up towards Roan Mountain. And he would walk from Roan Mountain to Elizabeth, and every day after he finished logging, and then come work at the wire mill. And to tell you something, that place got to smelling right by the time he left. He was a hard-working dude, but man, he just didn't. He worked hard, super demanding jobs all day, and did not have time to take a shower. And by the end of that day,
Well,
boy,
unless he's not doing customer service. That's
Yeah,
rough
a little bit
when,
different.
We're trying to walk in and do day shift customer service jobs. Sound like football sex.
well, I actually had run into him, and
Remember the old guy, Stinky Pete, as we called him?
Yeah. I remember Stinky Pete.
And then the time he got sprayed by a skunk and he smelled better.
Oh,
Stinky
pretty
Pete,
bad.
the old dude.
Yeah, he was really,
He looked
really,
like a
his
pirate.
tongue was black.
He looked like the guy on the Gorton's fish box.
Yeah.
But homeless.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
did. He really did.
we had like a, didn't we have like a code over the intercom for whenever we saw him in there?
Probably.
I don't remember what it was.
Code Brown.
But yeah, but
But there
it's
was that
like,
one guy that would lean up against the buggy too that had stuck his ass with. He smelled pretty bad.
then there was the dude that pissed in the little mark cart
Mm.
every time.
There was
Mercy.
a girl at Winn-Dixie before they tore that one building. Well, no, that building's still there. It's just a Ace Hardware store now. There was a woman came in with. It was my first full circle, folks. We brought ecstasy up earlier. There was a woman came in high ecstasy. First, I didn't know what it was as a kid. I'd never had been alcohol. I was like, "Why is this woman over screaming in great pleasure in the floral section?" She was like on the floral counter, and she had like a pile of roses, and she was just like rubbing her hands on the pedal, going, "Ah!" like screaming.
Oh, Spill says there's a lot of lung fungus going around the U.S. She says she has lots of resin in her lungs, so she may be okay. Yeah, I think we all will.
Oh, and then she peed. That was the whole story. But we never told Jeremy McCann that it was apple juice. We told him it was apple juice in our urine, so he cleaned up and not us.
Spill says she heard Rasputin smelled like death. He's interesting to
Yeah, I
research. He
heard
was
that
hard to
too.
kill. Yeah, supposedly they shot him, stabbed him, poisoned him,
Tried
threw
to
him in the
drown him.
river. Yeah. Well, then some of that may be mythology, and other of it may be true. It'd be an interesting
I think
to.
there's a medical report that they at least did stab him twice and
Yeah.
shoot him and stuff.
Yeah, there's some of it's definitely true, but I feel like some of it's kind of legend at the same time. But let's see. It's 12 o'clock, y'all.
Poisoning had some validity to it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the reason
They did
think
eventually
it-
kill him. So.
Yeah, the reason I think the poison didn't take, though, is people were so busy trying to poison each other. They think he was just immune to it because so many people hate
People
him.
had tried him so many
They
times.
tried to kill him so many times he was immune to the poison.
Yeah, after you survive it a few times. Alvin says Al Gore was born 9 months to the day after the Roswell crash. How about that? And see, higher two levels mean more plant growth. Yep.
Hello, fellow humans.
All right. Good night, everybody. I'm glad to have you back with us, Alvin. Spill. So thank you for joining us, Buddy Bell. Thank you for being in the chat with us. Did we have anybody else in the chat tonight? I think that was everybody.
I don't remember. But all the people that watch afterwards, thank y'all for watching, too.
Please comment on the video. Let us know what you think about it. If you have anything to add, if you'd like to see us do anything else, you can email us at theironmountainhour@gmail.com. Ultimately, we decide what we're going to talk about, but it's always good to have your input and you know, whatever ideas you may have may influence us. We've had a few shows that the people have brought up, in particular Spill.
I would like to give a spoiler for something I want to talk about in the future that we already brought up, which is the idea that this is a conspiracy idea. It's not even a theory, I guess. Couldn't even conspiracy. It's just weird thinking from us is, what if the rapture already happened and the millennial reign, the 1,000 years of Christ on earth already happened, and then the Revelation, it says for a time, it's pretty undetermined. He let Satan go on the earth for the
Mhm.
specific reason of just letting everything play its course out, right? And what if that's where we're at? And that's why evil people can just rule, and that's
Could be.
wild. That we're in the undetermined
Well,
amount of
yeah.
time where Satan just rules Earth. That
I
would make a
mean,
whole lot more sense to me if the
uh,
Bible is true.
Yeah, well, and if you think about it, the reign of Christ really would have been 1,000 years from, well,
Atlantis is what my theory would be.
okay.
That all those ancient civilizations with the structures that are too big for us to comprehend, and all this math that they had before its time. What if that was the reign of Christ when Christ came down and said, "Let's fix all this stuff," and now we can't do all that stuff because Satan's in charge. He don't give a shit about us.
Could be.
Now music's really good allegedly, but
Yeah.
we can't build structures no more.
Well, there you go. And it also does tie in with, I mean, if
You know, Atlanta music wasn't awesome.
What if music used to be that much better? Like they had like just mastered shit, instruments you couldn't even believe.
well, I mean, like, I guess Satan was like, he was like,
Supposed to be the angel of music.
yeah, he was like the John Williams of heaven. And they got till he got kicked out. So maybe the music would be really good, and maybe it would have been lacking.
What?
Maybe it would have been lacking without him.
What if he was more like just like Neil Young, all right, but a little annoying after a while? you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Maybe that's why he got fired. Maybe that's why he got rebelled, because they were like, "Dude, you just keep pumping out. You know, it's
Criticizing me. I'll make my own heaven.
There you go. Well, listen, Tim, you could be right there. If you look at St. John's writings in the Revelation from the Isle of Patmos, a lot of people say it was coded message about, the goings on of the day with the Roman Empire. So,
Yeah. Well, this will be a funner one for us to talk about though. Is what if the ancient technology and all the ancient architect and stuff was actually just a advanced civilization because it was literally the Empire of Christ, and now we live post rapture, pre destruction of the earth, and that's why everything's so goofy.
yeah, Alvin, maybe he did get kicked out because his music was so bad. Maybe he wasn't rebelling
just
at all. Yeah, he just sucked, and they were like, "Dude, you got to get out of here." And he's like, "Fuck this."
Lucifer can't sing.
Yeah, but anyway, well,
God, I imagine them like crickets rubbing their wings together, and he's up there going, it's all out of tune. It sounds like
He's like doing
it
Frank
literally
Zappa.
sounds like the theme, the lead guitar part from Devil Went Down to Georgia, which sounds like shit. He should have lost to Johnny.
sounds like Frank Zappa doing the playing the bicycle on the Tonight Show. All right, y'all. Hey, listen, we'll talk about that in Hollow Moon next week. Appreciate y'all joining. No, we probably don't want to do that. Well, we might. Hey, we'll see you Wednesday night. We're going to talk news and current events roundup. Be sure, if you haven't already, like and share and subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you on Wednesday night. Don't forget to go visit the Rumble channel. See ya.
Piss.